Good evening, everybody. I'm looking forward to this. We've got Terra Invicta up tonight. I'm going to take a minute here just to make sure everything's properly set up before we jump into the game. But we took a little bit of a break from this one, not for any bad reason. It just happened to be that Old World released the Sacred and the Profane, which is a wonderful DLC for that game. And I don't know, I like Terra Invicta quite a bit, but I do also feel like my progress on it can be quite slow at times. And I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea, especially because Old World sort of had a new release, and Terra Invicta, probably the next big milestone that's going to hit will be the release of Terra Invicta, as opposed to there being sort of a massive new feature, let's say. It sort of seemed appropriate to put the time into Old World, especially because it had been so long since I'd played it recently. And I was delighted that we actually got to get to the end of the session that we had. So this is going to mean that Terra Invicta will have a little bit of there's going to be sort of a bit of I don't want to say learning curve, but I really don't have a better term for it. Essentially, I'm just going to need to find my feet again and I don't know, as much as I can, just try and get some perspective on where the playthrough currently is. I also want to take a quick minute here and just say that this is a copy of the game that I was given by Hooded Horse. It's a little bit of a weird one just because I was actually a Kickstarter backer on Terra Invicta. So this is another one of these weird cases where, it's a game that I'm already sort of predisposed towards being interested in. It's one that I was going to cover anyway. And the reason why I sort of feel it's good to talk about the Hooded Horse connection here is because when it was doing its demo before the game had been released, I was actually given a sort of a streamer preview of the game, of the demo, which had a few features enabled that the general public didn't have. And so, in that sense, it's always good to sort of disclose when there's an interest in things. This one's probably maybe overdoing it a little bit, but I don't necessarily think it hurts to... Oh, that's interesting. I don't necessarily think it hurts to just sort of, talk about, I don't know, even when there's like a little bit of a gray zone, I feel like it's not a bad idea to, just, oh, this is interesting, monthly incomes? I might want to take a look at a couple of these, details as I play. But yeah, with that in mind, I think this is a great game. Like I said, I'm playing it very slowly, but I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a bad feature. But I do think we're a little bit behind in terms of my playthrough, so we are going to take a minute here and see... Wow, January. Feels like I was playing this more recently, but no, I guess it's been that long. I will say I'm also starting to sort of dig myself out from the pile of work that I have. I think the next couple of weeks are still going to be quite challenging, but I'm sort of seeing the end. And then of course there's also some deadlines coming up within the next week or so, so that tends to focus the mind as well. Although to be honest, I'd be happier if if things would just stop happening so quickly. But I hope you are all well, and as soon as we load in, we'll get reacquainted with the playthrough. Okay. So it looks like I've got some tasks left aside. Now, if memory serves, we were actually at war, and this was partly... I mean, we had an opportunity, so, why not take advantage of it? But I think it was also a chance for me to see how the combat worked. But I think what I'm going to do here, I'll go through the quick kind of the news items. I tend to ignore a lot of this, but hopefully this will start giving me an indication of where I'm at in the session. Oh. Yep, those are the Baltic states, all right. Okay, so rivalry with Belarus. Poland and Belarus have ended their rivalry. Iran and Guatemala have ended their alliance. Okay, we'll assign the counselors when we can. Belarus has initiated a spaceflight program. Now, this is one thing that I've noticed. I'm hearing a rumbling. Okay, apparently the Earth rumbles. Now, I'm noticing that even though I've got the United States, my boost income leaves much to be desired. I mean, I suppose because we have a hab up, maybe that's one reason why it's lower, but then again, we have... yeah, there's other stations that people are controlling, so I don't think that necessarily answered it. Anyways, we'll take a look at our intelligence screen, and I'll talk a little bit about my worries there. I have a feeling, though, that basically the creation of all these space programs seems to have blunted my edge as far as space is concerned. We're now able to undertake the Institutional Outreach Project. Operatives with the resistance have spotted a suspected counselor of the enemy faction in the Baghdad region of Iraq. Malaysia has undergone a coup d'etat. So, few detected counselors. Okay. Again, more spaceflight programs. We succeeded with the assault. These are not as important. Protectorates, looking to mine asteroids. And a violent revolution has overthrown the government in Zambia, Malawi. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with the with intel. So let's go to resources and just sort of see what we're up against here. So the first thing I'm looking at here would be the boost available. And if you notice, we're at 0.17. So we've got 0.19, 0.18, 0.18, 0.36, 0.18, and 0.17. Now, there's a few of these where you can say, okay, well, we've got a hab, so that's going to be lowering our boost income. And fair enough, but I don't think that's the only answer here. I think it's actually quite fair to say, particularly someone like the Protectorate, if we take a look at them, right? They've got this habitat here. So it does sort of invite the question to me, like, what did I screw up? Why are they able to get, like, why am I able to have the United States and be so far behind on boost? So one thing we could do here is just take a look at all nations. We could organize it by boost. So Indonesia's actually got a surprising amount. In fact, they outdo the United States now. Okay, yeah, so it's the combination of Indonesia and Kazakhstan that's driving this. Okay, so with that in mind, let's just see what happened with Indonesia. So what's the deal with their funding priorities? Yeah, they pretty much put everything directly into boost, so not so much of a mystery there. Okay, so maybe we should go back to Intel and just see what we're up against. So I also have sort of been starving myself cash-wise. You can definitely see that reflected in terms of everybody's cash holdings. I still feel like this is a reasonable position for me to be in. The reason I say this is that I'm doing this to try and invest in other factors for my nations. But of course, the hope here is that these are investments that are going to pay off in the long run. And if they don't, then I'm in some trouble. The one case where I'm really dominating is science. So we've got 37 science. Our next highest would be the servants with 20. Sorry, not the servants, the protectorate with 21.7. So we've got a full 16-point lead. Well, not exactly full 16, a 15 and change point lead. So even the academy we've eclipsed. So this is the one advantage that I'm sort of holding on to. But everything else, like if you take a look at mission control, we're a laggard, if not dead last. Yeah, no, we are last in terms of mission control points. In terms of our boost income, we are I think I said lowest. Is that right? Tied for last with Project Exodus, of all people. Now again, in fairness, like how big is that difference? You know, by 0.2 or so, but except for the Protectorate, which is just killing it. Now, what about the other forms of income? So again, I think cash we probably would be able to get a handle on if we had to. Influence we are doing quite well. I believe we're at the top, tied for the top with the Academy. I believe operations we're actually very strong on, so we're earning 0.62, and the next one is Exodus with 0.41. We talked about boost, we talked about mission control, we talked about science. And then the other thing that's nice, but also a cause for concern, is that in terms of our influence cap, we are at 272. Now, the reason why this should be a point of concern is that basically because we have about a 50-point advantage, if not more, over most of my rivals, one of the questions I may want to ask of myself is, why is it that these other factions are able to do so much more, right? Like, why is it that they're able to have more boost than me when I have access to more countries in terms of command points? Now, part of that's going to be a question of resource allocation, but part of that's also going to be a question of, you know, am I managing well? I mean, managing things well will be a question of resource allocation. But this would definitely be the sort of thing that I want to get on top of for a future playthrough. Now, before we assign people to missions, I do also want to talk about a few... I don't know, if I can, I want to sort of establish a few points as far as... right, I think we were holding on to this to the bitter end. I wanted to try and establish a couple of priorities before we go too far ahead. So, right now our goal is to build a mine at one of our bases, accumulate sufficient resources to build a mine, then select one of your bases. Excuse me. In the hab screen and start the construction of a mine. Now, I remember there was something that we were holding off for on that, but I'd like to double check that. So that's going to be on Mars. We already have Olympus Mons. Okay, so this is going to be completed on the 4th, so we still have a couple of months. And the deal here is that, so it's all well and good to say that we're establishing the mine. Current and under construction power modules will not generate enough electricity to operate this module. Okay, so I wasn't actually expecting us to have enough to build this. So the fission pile... okay, so we got 5.1. Okay, so that apparently doesn't require power. Fission pile generates 10. Mining complex. Yeah, so just to be clear, so this is 59.5. 5.1. Actually, you know, so I don't think I have my... Oh, yeah, I do have my tablet. Sorry. Back in a sec. remember I take copious notes. I also think I forget my tablet every single time I play this. So. Okay. Oh yes, I was also tracking the research totals. I'm probably going to have to restart that, but I do have some numbers to work with. Okay. Got a few things here. So, just so I can take some notes, we've got 5.1, 327.2 days. For the fission pile. Nope. Mining complex is 59.5. Takes 357.2 days.
I would never want to belong to any club that would have someone.
What was
like
that?
me for
Lady Mana, thank you very much for the follow. How you doing tonight? And hello to yourself. Okay, so I believe there's still some time. Okay, so there's two things. Number one, we don't actually have enough boost to send both up. Now, the fact of the matter is that there's a 1 month difference between the fission pile and the mining complex anyway. Mostly good. Well, I hope that you can still upgrade that over some time, but some days I will take mostly good over the alternative. So I suppose it could be worse. And hello to you, all grins. Okay, so first of all, there's a little bit more boost that we need to accumulate. So the total that we're looking for here is 64.6. We're currently at 62.6. So essentially, we're looking for two boost. And remembering here, in fact, we could probably determine exactly. Hang on a second. Played Terra Invicta 2, but you're new, so it was like, yeah, well, that's fine. The funny thing here is that while I have been playing it since release, it's been kind of interrupted. So I had a computer upgrade, which set me back to square one. I also tend to be very deliberative when I play, so I haven't actually gotten that far in terms of the base game. So this is a chance probably for both of us to learn. Now, I am intrigued by the fact that the game says the Servants is the easiest one to play. I'm going to guess that that's probably just because if you let everything run to its logical end, the aliens will win. And so, in theory, the Servants, you have to really mess up to sort of to be able to cripple the alien invasion enough to. There's only so much of an anchor that a new player can be, I think is basically what that's saying. However, it does intrigue me that the Resistance is sort of the tutorial one. And I think it makes a lot of sense to just pick one faction instead of to do a tutorial for everyone. And the Resistance both seems the most interesting as well as probably the most sort of baseline. But you played the Resistance and it was that bad you wanted to start with Project Exodus. What was it that made you decide Project Exodus? I actually wound up going for the Initiative, but I'm curious where I'm kind of curious where people go in terms of their interests. And yeah, this is actually one of the things that I've been doing rather specifically for this game, which is where I can, I've actually wanted to specifically do the tutorial in the order that it presents things, and then sort of make a determination: is this something that I would have done myself, or now that I've done it, would I delay doing this thing, or would I try and get this other thing done earlier? Because I'm noticing that there's certain technologies that I'm looking for that pretty clearly are part of a later tutorial that I haven't gotten to yet. So I'm actually quite late in terms of all the space stuff, so that's going to be a problem that I need to overcome. And that's neat. Again, it's just one of these ones. I really like the different personalities behind the different factions. So I'm probably sympathetic to the Resistance, as a default. But when I want to go, when I kind of want to go off the beaten path, for some reason, the Initiative just struck me as a particularly interesting one. Maybe I just like playing the bad guy or something. Okay. Right. So before I go, oh yeah, sorry, I was going to talk about how much more we need. So we need exactly 2 more boost, and I believe this is a daily boost income. So essentially, we could just divide this by 0.17, and we can say that. Wait, really? Just 11 days? Okay, cool. Now, of course, that's still going to be a year away in terms of the mining operations. But the one other thing I wanted to keep an eye on was the Earth launch window. So I'm curious if this number keeps going down. The drawback here is that this is over half a year away. So there's a question in terms of whether or not the saved boost is really going to be worth it. But at minimum, let's at least get up to what we need for the... Yeah, actually, this is the funny thing. Like, really, if it's just a question of 11 days to get the 2... there's actually an argument to send up the mining complex now because we're going to be able to send the fission pile up before it moves up. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a look at. I'm going to make a note of this launch window. I'm kind of interested in seeing how this number changes over time. You haven't played TI for a while, but when it comes to the space stuff, you're always a little in the dark as to what's going to tip over your space presence into the aliens are going to destroy you and only you now territory. Yeah, well, I know they give you the little indicator, but it definitely was pretty vague in terms of what's going on. And I believe by design, doesn't give you a full picture. Like, I think it introduces some noise. So at some point, I'm sure I'm going to learn that I've crossed the line. Okay, let's get my counselors sorted out. So Toby should still be advising the U.S. government.
Ready for orders.
We've got Andre and Gunarty as free agents. Okay, so let's see if Amvi is still doing the right thing. Yeah, so we're polarized. Wait a minute, that's cohesion. No, we're in an insurgency in Nicaragua, so I think that makes a lot of sense.
Ready to go.
Okay, choose where they need to be. So we have abandoned El Salvador, so it's not necessarily the most important thing for us to sort out. Most of our North American territories are in good hands. Oh, this is right. We want to reclaim Cuba.
At your service.
So I think
here.
Narty should be able to. Interesting. I was not expecting that to be so difficult.
Standing by.
Wow.
Standing by.
Hard target.
Acknowledged.
Okay, well, let's still give it a shot.
Targeting the opposition.
Ready.
I'm also going to have to pick someone to kick out to get myself under my cap again. Oh, hang on, no. I think I was doing a charm offensive in Guatemala, actually.
I will tell our story.
Okay. Let's take a quick second here to see if there's any organizations that we can do anything with. Don't really have the money to do too much with this stuff. Should do a quick breakdown actually just to see. So counselors are by far the biggest drain. and that's the organization. So I'm broadly okay with that. And then XP-wise, I'm not expecting too much, but let's just double check. Yeah. Okay. So I think I'll lock that in for now. I'm probably going to need to remember what my overall strategy was, but I know right now I'm trying to deal with sort of the unrest in my various regions. Finally, under nations, basically here I just need to weight everything by their cap. Oops. So Iceland's good for 286. Panama would be worth 8, so probably here what I want to do is take Nicaragua and Iceland and just boot both of them. What am I doing? So that kind of suggests maybe I shouldn't have been trying to stabilize Nicaragua when we have other regions, but that's fine. We'll sort that out. Okay, so what are the other things that I want to try to be doing at the moment? I think I'm going to wait a little bit longer on the. I'm going to wait a little longer on the mining station on Mars. One thing I do want to make a note of is the current state of research. So on December the 16th... Okay, so I'm going to try and take slightly better notes this time. So for me, I am currently at 654. Next highest are the servants at 456. And then next highest would be the initiative at 416. The second one, we are at 1,135 science. Next highest is Exodus at 941. And third place is the Academy at 673. It's also pretty clear that everybody's just kind of given up on this section. Finally, we've got industrialization of space. Now, I'm pretty much running away with this one. But this is one that I also want to keep an eye on in terms of the total. So currently, I'm at 6,589. The next highest would be the servants at 4,569. Finally, we've got the Protectorate, who don't really count, at 1455. So the thing that I want to do here is I did have a note from presumably the end of November. I do have some numbers here. So in terms of my own efforts, we went up. Now the problem here is that I may have changed these numbers partway through, so I should consider this to be a noisy signal. But essentially, in the first period, for the first one, I moved up by 206. Compared to the oh, interesting. I only took myself and the next closest rival, so I'll scale back a little bit on. So it looks like the next highest was originally the Protectorate. So if that's true, what I actually need to worry about are the servants. In any case, they've moved up to 456, which means that they've moved up a lot. That's 157, although we're still outpacing them, so... So that's probably overestimating my rival, but that's, again, overestimating a rival is... with commercial mining. I'm not familiar with commercial mining, but tell you what, let me take a quick second here on... let me take a minute on the... and just sort out these calculations, and then we can take a look at the tech tree together. Oops, sorry. Okay, so we've got 1135... currently we're at 10, 13. So we're at 122 in theory. That's, in theory, 2 weeks worth of work. Next highest was 865, so this is claiming Project Exodus. That seems to be right. So in principle, they are behind. They're at 76, so we're outpacing them on that. And then finally at our 6520, pretty slow progress. 69. And then we contrast that to the 4569. So in this case, the servants have effectively given up, contributing to the third one. Okay. So the other thing I want to just take a quick look at, so it's about 2 weeks for each of these, so 9.115, multiply that by 14, so that suggests 127.61. So in this case, the estimate that we're getting from the game pretty substantially underestimates how much we're actually generating. However, I note that we're getting a 16% bonus. Even then, once we add a 16% bonus, we get 148. So my guess here is the effects of Tony advising the U.S. government aren't being accounted for here. Basically, as far as everything's concerned, we're still dominating the research agenda, which I'm pretty happy with. I'd like to have a little bit more balance between everything, but it seems on the basis of what we see here, what we are feeding to our research projects is enough to keep us on top. I do, however, want to make sure in the next period that we do actually keep our leading position. And I note particularly here that if the servants did in fact leapfrog the protectorate, I only have a 50-point margin of error, and of course what we calculated based off of this is less than that, that 50-point difference. So that's that's one that I'm going to want to keep a fairly close eye on. Now, we had a question here from Lady Mana about commercial mining. So again, it's not one I'm immediately familiar with, but let's see what we can find here. Commercial mining companies. This project has a 55% chance of unlocking for us to research after all the prerequisites are fulfilled. We gain 10% more revenue from sales of space resources on the Earth market. Interesting. So I suspect probably what you're asking here is like what do they mean from sales of space resources on the Earth market? Now, I have a suspicion here would be this is probably what happens to the boost after any surplus boost that you have. So each point of boost represents the capability to move 10 metric tons of material from Earth's surface to low Earth orbit via rocket launches and other conveyances. Boost can also deliver items to more distant destinations at a significant penalty and substitute for space resources. It's primarily generated from nations with a space program, but can also come from orcs. Oh, interesting. So that doesn't cover it in here. Is that maybe the codex? Each point of boost represents... Okay, same text. Maybe I got this from the wiki then. Oh no, hang on. Mission control, not boost. The mission control resource accounts for all the staff and technical apparatus required to support our operations in space. Insufficient mission control makes it much easier for other factions to seize our assets and makes accidents far more likely. We may not build or acquire new HABs or ships if we do not have any mission control available. Excess mission control is converted to research and money. You can sell metals and so on Earth. Okay, so I didn't know that you could sell metals and such on Earth. Oh yeah, there it is right there. But yeah, like I said, there's a few things that I'm... So one, I got to keep my eye on the research, or the status of the research to make sure that I'm not... Hang on, do we have Jordan? No, we did leave Jordan behind. So number one, I want to make sure I'm still top dog in terms of research. Number two, I want to keep an eye on the cost to transport things to Mars. I probably want to get those resources sooner rather than later, but if I can store more of my boost in exchange for launching within the window, I kind of want to see what the effect of that is. And then also just try and keep a lid on things in terms of Earth. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do other than just try and bring some order back to the various regions that I control. But I can still try and do some aggressive moves as well. So we are ready to unpause and move on. The biggest thing here about the mine is that it is
offering assistance.
For me, it would be good to get the objective dealt with sooner rather than later, because of course I do want to see what the tutorial is going to tell me to do. I want to see what the tutorial is going to tell me to do after I successfully build that that building. Okay. So we're basically capturing. We knew this before, but we're capturing territory faster than the tanks sort of getting banged up. Although our allies pretty much abandoned us on this mission. This was the tank that was deployed previously. As you can see, it's a bit worse for wear. I'm reasonably confident that we're going to see this through, but I do want to make sure that I don't wind up losing a unit to a stupid adventure. Oh, EU's finally showing up.
Public opinion is moving in our direction.
I've increased popular support for the resistance in Guatemala. Our public support has changed by 2% and now stands at 22%. So we are going to make that a permanent assignment until we're at 50% or higher.
Order is returning.
Order is returning.
Okay, now there's some alien operations going on here. So receiving reports of returned abductees in the Guatemala City region of Guatemala. So that's a big one that we want to pay attention to, right? That's kind of in our backyard. It has been Vanguard Master, certainly not for a lack of interest, but obviously I had a few tasks. So yeah, it does look like it's going to be a narrow win, but we should still be able to see this thing through. Once we get to the next decision period, Protectorate began construction of a new outpost. No, they're on Mars as well. Yeah, we're definitely behind on the space race. This actually looks like an even match now, so we've actually not really been performing. It would be tempting to send another unit. They'll probably arrive too late, but let's prep just in case. Yeah, so if we continue at this rate, the 1st Armored Division is going to lose. I do intend to go back to Old
We
World,
are in
incidentally. It's just a
control
question in
now.
terms of, what the Monday game is, so. We have purged supporters of the Protectorate and taken a control point for the resistance in Cuba. Now, I'd like to keep Cuba, but obviously this is not a good time. I was kind of expecting this to take a bit longer than it did. We can't do anything about the protected area, but that's, you know, we'll leave that aside. Okay, we should have a decision to make soon. Cool. We have the resources to acquire the National Reconnaissance Office for one of our counselors. Now, whether or not we want to do that is another question, but let's take care of first things first. So we will investigate the alien activity.
Headed there now.
Here we probably should just abandon Cuba at this point. They're 5 points. I mean, they might be contributing something worthwhile here, but we're sharing it with the Protectorate, and it's... So... We may actually just be handing this back to the Protectorate, to be completely honest, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, Slovakia is promoting its latest breakthrough globally. I do want to start investigating some of the rival counselors again, but I have a few other tasks to take care of first. Spain and the European Union are now allies. Greece and India are now allies. Greece and the United Kingdom are allies. Greece and Germany have ended their alliance, and North Korea and Australia are now allies. I never got the impression that you didn't like this game, so it was more of an instance of you being Captain Obvious than any other comment. It's the same campaign that you were playing last time, or did I restart? No, it's tempting to restart, because of course you learn new things each time you play, but if I do that, I'm never going to make any progress inside of the game. In this case here, we're sort of back to focusing on our off-world industry. I am a little worried about this armored division. We're sort of back to sort of even numbers, but generally you'd like to have a few people left over at the end of the invasion. So we've got the 3rd Infantry, which is arriving, and then of course they need to actually move into the region. But I'll worry about that later. Okay, I think probably the deployment is where I want it to be, but we are going to take a look at Mars. Okay, so... I notice here that it says Earth launch window 28th October. It has gotten cheaper. It's actually 4% cheaper now. So that doesn't 100% answer my question. This is actually going to be the point where I go to the wiki very quickly. And this is because I'm a little curious if they're going to talk about the launch window here. And just for those of you who are interested, this is the resource I'm consulting. There's also a wiki-specific room in the Discord, I believe. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick search for launch. Interesting, so it doesn't seem to say anything here. So what if we took a look at... mining, maybe? Okay, early game tech, that doesn't really help me. Just taking a look at the HABs section here. HABs may be founded in 3 ways. quite help me. So the last thing we'll take a look at is boost. How you doing, Tikri? This is more or less quoting the in-game materials. So, I want to keep an eye on this launch window. So the thing that kind of weirds me out a little bit here is the moving of the launch window, and specifically the fact that it's moving to like later and later periods. But at this point here, right, we did say that we needed the, it was 64.6 for our boost, which we have. So at this point, I think we can deploy to our site. So mining complex, build on Earth, 205, 59.5, 364.8 days. So I'm curious about that number because that's different from last time. So before, it was actually 357.2. Same boost cost, but it actually seems like it's going to take us longer. We've completed the build a mine at one of your base's objective. Mining complexes are your primary means of acquiring space resources, which are used for building your fleets. Continue prospecting space bodies and establishing mines throughout the solar system. Objective, build a ship. The war against the aliens can't be won on Earth alone. We need to develop the technologies to fight them in space as well. Constructing warships at our HABs is an expensive and challenging task, and we will need a significant space-based industry to support it. This may take several years to accomplish. In the fleet screen, use the ship construction screen to order a specific ship's construction using a template that you have created. Okay, I want to do that, but I want to power my mine first. So we'll take the fission pile, we'll build it here on Earth. Okay, so actually it says first thing I should be doing is researching the space dock project. Which I think we might actually be working... No, I think I avoided it actually for this part of the tutorial. What am I doing? Sorry, I gotta take down that note. You need to go, we'll come back for sure. A little late now, have fun everyone. Thanks a lot for stopping by, Lady Mana. I hope you have a good rest. Okay, so, on October 28th, 39% on January 1st. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick look here at my science. So, January 1st, we are sitting at 856. Servants are sitting at 600. So yes, they're generating quite a bit, but I think we're outpacing them. We are at 1254 compared to Exodus's 1018. And looks like, again, our rivals have abandoned the other research. So I am going to take a minute here, at least for the other two. This is pretty important to me because I do want to make sure that I can plunge as much as I can into sort of my special research. So 202 for this one. The servants are plowing in 144. Okay. So I'm basically short about 32 points of research. And again, I'm assuming that's Toby's contribution there. So the question that I have is, what if I were to knock down Arrival International Relations a little bit? Here's what I'm going to do. I got 1254, subtract that from 1135 is something like 119. Okay, I'm gonna do a trial balloon just because we've opened up a bit of a difference between between us and the rivals. So we're losing about 2 1/3 in terms of the points. I do want to be a little careful on arrival international relations, but I'm pretty sure I can go one period with this and still come out ahead. There's a small argument here, so if we're at 5434, yeah, that doesn't work. Yeah, so I'm gonna try rolling back a little bit on international relations, and then we'll see where the rest of it goes. Okay. Next up, counselors. I guess we already determined those, so we'll lock it in.
Offering support.
Okay, we're at 12% now. Hopefully the support from the EU is going to make this a little bit easier for us to survive this.
We're winning their hearts and minds.
Things are stabilizing.
We were unable to increase security.
Okay, not great. Okay, we're down to 6 on that armored division. 5, but they've only got 4% left to go. I'll be biting my nails for the whole thing. I didn't take a look at the reconnaissance office. Yeah, there's no way we have the money for that.
Recon complete.
I have learned some useful information from my investigation of the alien activity in Guatemala. We will receive a small bonus for our xenology research going forward. Okay, 2% to go in Nigeria. They'll arrive on the 21st. So again, I suspect this is going to be settled before they're in there, but probably not a bad idea to clarify the situation. Jesus, 3%. Amethyst advertising. So this is not a terrible one. Hijinks minions. So this is actually a really good one for us because it will give us income. I think this is probably a good one to give to Gunarti because of their commands. Alternatively, I want to give it to somebody with investigation, but no, I think start by grabbing this. Now, Amethyst advertising, there's something rather tempting about granting public campaign to... Actually, everybody's got public campaign in my roster, so The only argument for Amethyst advertising would be the extra influence income, which is not bad, but maybe not an overriding concern. Also, holy crap, we're at 1%. I'm gonna see this thing through to the end, but I am not feeling good about the... Well, actually, okay, I want to see what happens when it goes to 0, but I might actually go to one of the autosaves, depending on what happens when you get to 0. Okay, interesting. So you don't get wiped out at 0%. Fascinating. Commander, it appears that we have some supporters in Brazil, making it a good target for control. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Iran and Australia are allies. Okay, actually, I think I'm going to skip most of this. Okay, European Union's blobbing up, but I think they're friendly to me. Mostly. Humanity first. Probably would not be a bad idea for me to start. As it said, I should be sending out some more probes. So let's go, before we go too far, let's think about where I'm at in terms of my resource acquisition. So right now, for my sites, we are going to have... Is that accurate? Because it would seem to me here that... Oh, no. It's not even close to accurate. Okay. So 12.8 for water, 28.9, 47.3, 24. So I suppose out of everything, fissiles would be the one that we're most interested in, although it would be fair to say that you probably don't want to have even amounts across everything. Probably what we want to be looking at is what we need to actually build the ships that we want to build. Of course, we can't do that until we have the relevant technology. But let's maybe take a look at nearby bodies and see if there's something we can find as far as fissiles are concerned. So Martian moons aren't going to help me. Okay, we got a few objects here that might have some interesting possibilities. It's tricky to manage some of this in 3D. We can't do this on Venus, huh? Yeah, so generally fissiles seem to be in short supply. If I were to take a look at Earth's moon. Okay, so Copernicus crater and Sea of Tranquility. So it is possible to get, like an integer as far as fissiles are concerned. So, well, okay, 1.1's not terrible, but still, there's more that we can do. Now, I guess the tricky part here, like, surely the game does not expect us to click on every single object and like send a probe to it. Surely there is a better way for us to navigate the list of things that we may want to claim. Maybe not. I'm losing perspective here. I suppose there's also the complication that the aliens are taking so many sites that are actually fairly close to us. So let's get our attention back to Mars for a second. So Terra Serenum is an interesting candidate here. Because again, at the 2.1, as far as the actually, so it's a nice complement to most of the things that I'm working on. So like the water isn't quite where you'd want it to be, but this gives me the 24.4. I get the 2.1 for the fissiles. Volatiles seem to be pretty good. But again, that I don't need to make a probe for that. Maybe I make a platform, I don't know. I suppose the question would be, well, yeah, so the question would be, there's the one argument for a platform outside Mars, and then there's another argument which would be to put another one on Earth, because the ones on Earth wind up giving you bonuses on the planet. And I'm probably a little bit more inclined to be getting those terrestrial bonuses more than the others right now. Okay. But it doesn't answer the question in terms of like what objects am I looking to plunder right now. I figure I should be using my boost for something. It's kind of funny, you get like a nice breakdown of nations inside of these upper menus, but not so for the stellar bodies. Okay, here's what we're gonna do, because I could be spending forever just cycling through menus, and that's not really gonna do a whole lot here. Let's start by thinking about my counselors. So Gennarty does not have a real mission right now. So I think there's one of two things that we can do. We can either take a peek at an enemy counselor. Hang on. Was I doing this to someone else? We can always...
Reporting in.
Acknowledged.
Huh. Fair enough. I actually like this idea of getting... Yeah, let's investigate a few more unknown counselors.
Eyes on target.
Your orders?
So... Civil War in Honduras.
Where to?
So we're already trying to work on Guatemala. El Salvador's getting a bit better. Mexico's going in the wrong direction, but not enough for us to intervene. Insurgency in Panama, which is something that's currently under my control. I'm slightly inclined to actually push for Panama, but on the other hand,
At your service.
I don't know. I prefer the idea of
We'll
quieting
turn down the
some
heat.
of the hot spots. Okay, those are taken care of. Again, I'm not 100% sure what happens when we're at 0% strength. I'm keeping them here until the reinforcements arrive. Oh, looks like they're just being driven away automatically, which may mean that I lose the region. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Then I wanted to take a look at science. Okay, so this is January 16th. This is a pretty important one for me because I want to see how I'm doing relative to the competition. I think I can already see. Well, no, it's on the margin. So I don't need to worry about industrialization of space. We already dominate that. So we're at 997. So this is our less aggressive approach to research on that. So 856. So we knocked it down by 60 points. Now, when I take a look at these numbers, this actually tells me that we should be behind the servants by about 3 points. However, they may have changed their rate as well, because I've got 734. If I subtract that by 600, they moved up by 134. So it's a narrow, it's a narrow advantage that I have over them, but it is still an advantage. So I would expect with 1379, I would expect that the number that we gain has gone up. Yeah, we went from 119 to 125. And it's like 73 for... Okay. So I think I'm gonna keep it at this. So the reason why I want to throttle back a little bit on the global research is, again, I want to be controlling the agenda, but I do also want to be plowing resources into my council engineering projects. Now, if I don't have important council engineering projects, I can leave that aside. But right now, we've got a couple of expensive ones that we're waiting to wrap up. So I want to keep a careful eye on this. Number one, to make sure that the enemy doesn't sort of get the drop on me in terms of tech. But I also want to make sure that I'm sort of pushing ahead my particular agenda. I also want to take a quick second here, make sure that we're not missing out on opportunities. I would have thought we'd be making a little more money. Apparently not. What's the experience at? 16? 18. Just in case. Ah, okay. So I had been investing a lot in administration to gain access to more orgs. I think that's still the right call. Gives me a little more flexibility on my... Yeah, okay.
I will help them.
Nah! All right. So sorry to be a complete cornball here, but now that I know, I suppose it shouldn't be a surprise, like, to lose it when you go to 0%, but I suppose, like, I imagine going from 1 to 0 is maybe the more surprising one. I don't know. Anyways. I might actually even go a little bit further back in the playthrough just so I can deploy the army a little sooner. Yeah, so this is already at 0, so... I don't think autosave 2 is really going to give me all that more, which means I might actually go back to the start of the save, but it's not terrible because we kind of know what our we know what our next few moves are going to be. I do feel bad for sort of like completely undoing an hour's worth of work, but there's a little bit less for me to focus on. I'm kind of spoiled by Industries of Titan, which gives me the gives me like a million autosaves. Okay, so I don't think there's a whole lot. Yeah, like this is already going to arrive too late. Well, tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait for the EU troops to arrive, and then I'm actually going to move this one out. Now, that's probably going to change that to EU controlled, which doesn't make me feel so good. Okay, you investigate.
We'll see what we can find.
Hang on. Right, and this was the time that I rolled back on the research. Did I do the Mars base? No. Okay. All right, that's that. Oh, I also forgot to abandon the nation.
Offering counsel.
Maybe we'll wait till it gets to like 5.
Things are cooling off.
The situation remains chaotic.
Regime change in Nigeria. Oh, wow. That's totally different. The forces of the United States of America have imposed a new governing regime in Nigeria. America. All right. Obviously, this is absolutely massive in terms of our cap, so we are going to impose my resist and then abandon the nation. Okay. Cancel the operation. First Armored. I don't think it says where they're originally based. Nope, Dallas. Okay, so we'll move you back here. Where are we? Let's cancel out a few other things. Yeah, so apparently we just got very unlucky in terms of that war. It's also worth kind of looking at how long it takes to recover some of these
Here's what we found.
Units. I've learned some useful information from my investigation of the alien activity in Guatemala. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research moving forward. First Armored Division has arrived in the Lagos region. Not the most important right now. The European Union, under control of Humanity First, and Nigeria have ended their alliance. Fair enough. Okay, so they're moving to Dallas. Okay, still waiting for them to finish. China is an open control point with good boosting. Yeah, everybody would love to take China. It's easier said than done, my friend. Okay. Denmark and Spain have ended their alliance. Iran and Hungary are now allies. European Union and Nigeria have ended their alliance. Spain and Romania have ended their alliance. We've got counselors, non-sapient life forms in Colombia, so we're going to take them out there. Eight's not a lot to
Taking
spend
it to them.
a boost. Yeah, I mean, things are disastrous on Honduras, but we kind of need to deal with the alien threat first, so I'm happy with that. Now this was my January number, so things shouldn't be that different. So 985, interesting. Okay, so in addition to... So just taking a look at this, you would think that the research amounts are the same. This is not actually the case, though. I was at 997 originally, and I'm actually at 985, so that's a difference of about 12 points. However, the servants are also at 725, so I suspect that probably the numbers are still okay, but I am going to want to... Maybe I'll give it like 2 more periods. But I think we're still running away with it tech-wise. So we'll lock that in. The one thing I should have done was taken a look at organizations. Yeah, Hijinks Minions is one I wanted. Main Intelligence Directorate in Moscow. All right, so that's going to cost us 50 monies, which we can't. Now, the shame of this is that it does actually give us additional admin. If I recall, though, it's a monthly amount. Well, okay, so technically we could afford it, in the sense that we would be down to 23, but I don't know, I don't really feel... So like basically the question is like, what does this get us, right? So in exchange for 50 in terms of funding, we get additional influence. Now we're already pretty strong in terms of influence. We're dominant as far as the control, the ops are concerned, so that's not as big of a worry. MV becomes more persuasive. Now MV's not really being used for persuasion right now, so that's an important detail to keep in mind. Investigation goes up, which is a fairly important one. That's the reason why we got her in the first place, actually. Espionage is not bad, but it's not what we mainly use her for. Definitely the extra administration would be a huge help. And then security is kind of nice, but not my main concern. But again, in exchange for the 50, maybe not the most important thing for us to focus on. Southern Sword, on the other hand, I mean, again, lots of really tempting opportunities here, right? Again, ops is something that I've normally been very short of, but I can't quite justify the hit to finances right now, because finances are the thing that's sort of holding us back a bit. So I think the rest of this we're just gonna leave it. It's a shame, right? Because again, being able to get more of the orgs and the admin is a big deal.
offering support.
I think what I'll do on the next cycle as well is I think I'm going to see if I can do anything in the fleet construction. The 3rd Infantry Division has arrived in the Lagos region, so not quite where I want them right now. We'll move them back to Atlanta, which was one of these. Of course. Florida's in Atlanta, right? In fairness, I probably shouldn't have been checking the West Coast for that. Like, that was more of a sheer desperation play than anything. I'm not that bad at U.S. geography. Although, interestingly enough, I'm not as good at U.S. states as I am for South American countries. I guess it's because
people will come to our side.
The U.S. just doesn't have enough influence on
Violence is abating.
On world
things are stabilizing.
World affairs.
Target destroyed.
Our assault on the alien life forms in the Bogota region was successful. We estimate that we reduced the alien flora and fauna in this region by 42%, but it's likely that some remains. This was a 60% roll on 90, so certainly overkill, but you can never know until you actually do it, right? So I'm happy with that outcome. Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit less on autopilot now. Commander, it appears we have some supporters in Brazil, making it a good target for us to control. I agree. We still have control issues, though. Okay, so Yemen we're pretty much abandoning right away. Now, interestingly enough, Eritrea isn't pushing us over the edge. So in this case, I'm just going to hang on to it for a little while. You know, like this is more of a, I have it, so I might as well take advantage of it, but this is definitely not like a priority by any stretch of the imagination. Now, Gennady, we're going to send on, no, hang on, it was Amvi that we were going
Your orders?
To deploy for investigations, so...
Ready to go.
Gennady will take care of stabilizing Nicaragua.
Restoring order.
Amvi will
Reporting
go
in.
and look up the remaining unknown
Tracking
counselors.
target.
Toby pretty much automatically stays in the United States until told otherwise, and essentially what's going to happen with Andre is that they're going to move... What we do is we basically move from region to region until we're at 50% or higher for our opinion, and then we move on to the next region. If it seems like there is a nasty bit of unrest, so Guatemala, there's an insurrection. Nicaragua is just strife, so maybe we should reconsider. Honduras has the Civil War, which is not great. I mean, everything's bad, but...
We'll restore peace to this nation.
we are going to eventually... Oh, damn it.
Initiating surveillance.
Ready for my mission. We'll restore peace to this nation.
We're eventually going to be incorporating Central America into our sort of sphere of influence, so it's probably better that we get things under control sooner rather than later. Okay, so we're bringing the boys back home. Northern Balkan states and Germany have ended their alliance. Okay, we'll skip over these. I think I'm actually just going to skip all of this. I'm going to do a quick check-in on organizations and science. So it looks like basically it's the same as before. Special Forces Group. Yeah, if anything, it would be the main intelligence directorate. Is this the same as the FSB? I feel like the FSB is a slightly different. Fortunately, I can look it up on Wikipedia and pretend that I knew it all along. No, hang on. Yeah, okay. This is the military branch, whereas the FSB is a separate entity, I believe. Yes, okay. Very important to know. Any of you filling out a job application or whatever, just let me know. As always, we go for the administration, helps boost our total up here. Actually, I should be careful on that because I believe with Toby, there's actually a limit, I think. We might even be past it now that I think. No, hang on, because there's 24. So yeah, I think there's a point where you can actually hit your limit in terms of administration, at which point it doesn't make any sense to continue investing in orgs. We're also getting kind of to our limit in terms of the total, but I'll leave that aside. It's a little tempting to assign the Australian Signals Directorate and Security Intelligence Organization. Apparently, I just really like the Five Eyes. But I don't think it's getting me enough for the expenditure right now, so I'm going to hold off on spending those points. Okay. Tech, I definitely need to check in on. So this is going to be a noisy measure that I have because I let some time go by, but we're at 11:34, 8:67. This is February 1st. 15:05 compared to 11:64. And then I don't expect this number to change at all, but okay, as before. So again, I'm expecting this to be a noisy signal because the number was different from the last time I counted, but it should give me at least a rough figure in terms of how things are moving. So this is claiming 137. I would expect the real number is probably closer to 120 something. This is what I contributed over the past 2 weeks. At 867 compared to the number that I had that wasn't accurate, they're at 133. So that is actually an alarming number. Again, save for the fact that this would be the most unreliable that I have. So something for me to keep an eye on, but not something for me to freak out about yet. 126. And Exodus is contributing 73. So I don't want to lower the amount that I'm giving into Arrival International Relations, but for the most part, I think we're in a pretty good position. Okay. Lock it in. There was one other thing I wanted to take a look at, and that was Mars. Okay, so when it says the Earth launch window, 41%. So This is now December 14th. So on December 16th, it says September 16th, 35%. On January 1st, it says October 28th, 39%. And then December 14th, it says February 1st. Sorry, on February 1st, it says December 14th, 41%. So I'm still trying to get a read on exactly what this is telling me. This is absolutely one of these cases where I would want a mouse over to see exactly what, like, because, like, I sort of understand what this is saying. Obviously, you don't just, like, okay, so, like, there's a reason why you don't see, the infrastructure for space shuttle launches in the Northwest Territories, right? You see them closer to the equator. You don't just take a rocket and, like, point it up and, you know, just hope for the best. In fact, to my understanding, rockets basically travel sideways for all but the very beginning of their journey. And likewise, you know, depending on, like, when you go is going to matter. Because, of course, objects are at different places, it's going to take time to get there, and so on and so forth. So I think the idea here is that there's benefits to waiting for optimal windows, which the game is trying to communicate, but the difficulty here is that when it says, like, an Earth launch window, I'm seeing the bonus... Like, so the tricky part here is that I'm seeing this bonus go up, and I was assuming that it would go sort of the closer I get to this date, the higher the bonus is going to be. Oh, Kerbal Space Program 2 on Friday. How you doing, Noramesh? I actually had no idea that it was coming out that early. I am ashamed to admit that I want to love Kerbal Space Program, but I've actually spent very little time in the game, beyond some just very silly rockets in, like, the earlier versions of the game. But I really feel like that's a game that I should spend more quality time with, especially given how we're talking about all this stuff in Terra Invicta. But thank you for bringing that to my attention, because I actually, I probably want to look at that. I think one of the people on Phantom Brigade actually worked on Kerbal Space Program, but that's another game. All right. So what was I going to talk about? Yeah, so figuring out this Earth lot, like, this is absolutely the sort of thing where I would love to sort of put just a tooltip when I mouse over it to see exactly what this means. Because to a certain extent, I get the idea that yeah, the tricky part for me about Kerbal was really that I don't mind learning difficult things. I mean, that should be apparent from Terra Invicta, among other games. The biggest challenge that I had was that I found that I was relying a lot on, you know, various YouTube sites, so like Scott Manley and things like that, to like figure out how to do certain actions. And that's always very counter to the way I like to play games. Like, in the end, I don't necessarily just like being a fleshy implementation of somebody else's algorithm for playing a game. Some people love playing games that way, and, like, I obviously do not mean to suggest that mine is some sort of a pure way of playing a game or anything like that. But in terms of the things that interest me the most about playing games, and particularly games like Kerbal, it's to figure this stuff out. Oh, interesting. Earth launch window now. I mean, I can't launch anything at it anyway, but that's interesting that it says... So this would have been a wonderful, like a wonderful... Oh, actually, here's a question. So if we find something in a similar position to it... Interesting. That's like a world of difference between two pretty close objects. But yeah, in any case, like it's absolutely a way that not just like, so it's not just that people like playing games that way. Like, obviously the fact that channels like Scott Manley's exist shows that that's probably the way that most people like to play those kinds of games. But the difficulty for me is that I really feel like at a certain point there's just nothing for me to do in the game anymore. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing other people's things in the game, and that's never quite been... Again, it's just the question in terms of what I get out of playing particular games. And in that case, I feel like some of the magic isn't quite there for me. Okay. Sorry to take all this time on foreign bodies, but I'm trying to see if there's anything interesting I can find out fissiles-wise. It's not like I'm going to be investigating these planets. I don't even think I have the option. Could I throw a probe into Jupiter? Apparently not. So what is the closest object I could... Iris. Okay. So Mars may be my best option for fissiles. Anyway, I could be investigating this the whole time, but until I know what types of ships I'm looking for, I don't think it really matters. So, I do want to go back to the Codex really quickly. So, our objectives: build a ship. The war against the aliens can't be won on Earth alone. We need to develop the technologies to fight them in space as well. Constructing warships at our HABs is an expensive and challenging task, and we will need significant space-based industry to support it. This may take several years to accomplish. Build a space station, which is the first step to constructing ships. Research orbital shipbuilding technology. Research the Space Dock project. Space docks unlock construction on space stations. Research the Interplanetary Warships project. Interplanetary Warships allows you to design and construct gunship, escort, and corvette class ships. Construct a space dock module. Stations require a space dock module to construct ships. Construct a space dock module on one of your stations. Go to the fleet screen and click on a Design Ship Class button. Follow the ship designer tutorial and complete a ship design. And once you are happy with the design, save the template so it can be used to construct a ship. And in the fleet screen, use the ship construction screen in order to order a specific ship's construction using a template you have created. So, I'm going to click on this button here. Yeah, but I don't get this option until I've researched the text. So, this I think is a little bit like what the viewer earlier was talking about, Lady Mana. I don't quite agree with them as far as the quality of the tutorial for Terra Invicta. I think the tutorial is actually good at a few things. But here's an example where I have a little bit of a difference in terms of the way the game is presenting the information to me relative to what I think I need to know at a given time. So I've made some decisions in terms of when to build space-based resources. I made, so this would mean the, something in orbit of Earth. I've obviously built mining resources on Mars, or I'm in the process of building them. Now, in fairness, that particular one was driven as much by necessity. I essentially had lost the race to the moon. And so in this case, we sort of leapfrogged that and went straight for Mars. But it is fair to say, I was doing most of these actions because the tutorial told me to do them. And one of the challenges here, I sort of understand that you kind of get free transport of resources, like space-based resources, so I don't think you need to worry about transporting sort of water from Mars to Earth or anything like that. I'm the Resistance because I'm playing as the tutorial. But the challenge here would be this. Now that I've got the mining operations, the tutorial's now saying is like, okay, so do all of these steps in order to build a warship, which is fine. Like, obviously you want to teach someone to do that. But of course, I'm going to be building the. I'm going to want to build ships using the mining resources that I've produced on Mars. And until I can actually get to that ship designer, I don't know what resources I really need to be able to build the ship. So I can make some guesses, right? I'm probably going to need less water and more, like, metal to build a ship. But in terms of answering the question, like, what's the most important thing for me to explore? What mining sites do I want to take? Do I want to take something that's very general purpose? Or do I want to focus on something that's going to give me lots of one particular resource? That's an open question, and that's something that I actually don't have a way of answering until I'm very far down the construction path for a ship. And of course, the drawback here is, let's say that I said, okay, I love the movie Sunshine, you know, who doesn't love, whomst among us has not wanted to make a giant bomb that blows up the sun? And my answer to you is, meest. I am the one whomst did not want to make one bomb to blow up the sun. I wanted 2 bombs, like Kappa. So, you know, then you go and you mine as many fissiles as you can, and you find out, oh, hey, you have absolutely nothing available for building ships. The last decade, the last decade has been an utter waste inside of the game. And at that point, you feel a little bad, right? So the tricky part here is that, like, this is a lot harder than it seems in terms of communicating tutorial stuff. Now, I think and I am going to jump back into the game a little bit, but this is actually relevant to some of the videos that I'm doing for money, actually. It seems very easy, particularly if you're familiar with a game, to say, oh yeah, you just do X, Y, and Z. But a number of you know that I did the video for Industries of Titan. And, you know, the video for Industries of Titan had to be no more than 30 minutes. You can kind of tell because it sounds like I'm rushing at parts of it. There's a lot of different systems in Industries of Titan, and you need to communicate them in a way that people will understand, but also you need to communicate them in a way that will, like, make the game still seem fun. Obviously, if you do this very dry video, or if you misrepresent how the game is, right? If you just make it look like this absolute chore to play, you haven't helped the developer, right? You haven't, you've really failed to communicate what is special about that game, and that's terrible when it's a game you love, and, as it was for Industries of Titan with me. So, it's all well and good for me to say, okay, it would be wonderful if I could understand what resources I need to be able to, to make an intelligent decision in terms of setting up my mining operations. But how do you solve that, right? Do you say to someone, okay, go down this path for building a ship. Oh, ha, you can't build the ship yet. You actually need the resources for it. Go and build a mining operation on the moon or Mars. Well, the way the AI is going to play, chances are all the good sites on those 2 locations. So there is an argument for that, right? Because you can buy the resources. Or sorry, no, you can only sell them. Huh. I thought you could buy for some reason. I know you can pay for it. Basically, in this case, we're paying through Boost for the volatiles in the water right now. But yeah, basically there's a cost to doing things in certain orders, and of course if there's an optimal way to play, and that's different from the way that you can play in the tutorial, you also don't want to create bad habits at the start. So I appreciate kind of what Terra Invicta's up against here. And this might be a case where probably they would maybe want to put something inside the codex. Man must rise above the earth, on top of the atmosphere and beyond, for only thus will he fully understand the world in which he lives. I'm pretty sure Socrates didn't say that. I'm gonna look this up. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things saying it's Socrates. But it's not actually saying... Oh, interesting. It says here, Phaedo. Okay. I've got a Stephanus number, so... Just give me a second here. As long as I've got the Stephanus numbers, I can actually look this up. May need to get another tea after this, but so the really embarrassing part is that this is actually this is a dialogue that I've read, so if it's actually in here, that's on me for not being a good student. Well, I didn't read it when I was in class, but... Okay, so the claim is that it appears somewhere around 109E. So it says, our experience is the same, living in a certain hollow of the earth. We believe that we live upon its surface, the air we call the heavens, as if the stars made their way through it. This too is the same because of our weakness and slowness. We are not able to make our way to the upper limit of the air. If anyone got to the upper limit, if anyone came to it or reached it on wings and his head rose above it, then just as fish on rising from the sea see things in our own region, he would see things there, and if his nature could endure to contemplate them, he would know that there is the true heaven, the true light, and the true earth. For the earth here, the stones and the whole region are spoiled and eaten away, just as the things in the sea are by the salt water. Okay, I mean, maybe it's a translation thing. I get what he's saying, but I don't know. I'll give him half points for this. I'm going to see if I can find like the full passage in context to see if there's a more sympathetic reading that I can give. There are many strange places upon the earth, and the earth itself is not such as those who are used to discourse upon it believe it to be in nature or size, as someone has convinced me. Simmias said, "What do you mean, Socrates? I have myself heard many things said about the earth, but certainly not the things that convince you. I should be glad to hear them." "Indeed, Simmias, I do not think that it requires the skill of Glaucus to tell you what they are." Glaucus, a proverbial expression whose origin is obscure. "But to prove them true requires more than that skill, and I should perhaps not be able to do so. Also, even if I had the knowledge, my remaining time would not be long enough to tell the tale. However, nothing prevents my telling you what I am convinced is the shape of the earth and what its regions are." "Even that is sufficient," said Simmias. "Well then," he said, "first thing of which I am convinced is that the earth is a sphere in the middle of the heavens. It has no need of air or any other force to prevent it from falling. The homogeneous nature of the heavens on all sides and the earth's own equipoise is sufficient to hold it, for an object balanced in the middle of something Homogeneous will have no tendency to incline more in any direction than any other. Sorry, I thought I saw a flash somewhere. Will have no tendency to incline any more in any direction than any other, but will remain unmoved. This, he said, is the first point of which I am persuaded. And rightly so, said Simmias. Further, the earth is very large, and we live around the sea in a small portion of it, between Phasis and the Pillars of Heracles, like ants or frogs around a swamp. Many other people live in many such parts of it. Everywhere about the earth, there are numerous hollows of many kinds and shapes and sizes into which the water and the mist and the air have gathered. The earth itself is pure and lies in a pure sky where the stars are situated, which the majority of those who discourse on these subjects call the ether. The water and mist and air are the sediment on the ether, and they always flow into the hollows of the earth. We who dwell in the hollows of it are unaware of this, and we think that we live above on the surface of the earth. It is as if someone who lived deep down in the middle of the ocean thought he was living on the surface, or its surface. Seeing the sun and other heavenly bodies through the water, he would think the sea to be the sky, because he is slow and weak. He has never reached the surface of the sea, or risen with his head above the water to come out of the sea to our region here, nor seen how much purer and beautiful it is than his own region, nor has he ever heard of it from anyone who has seen it. Our experience is the same, living in a certain hollow of the earth. We believe that we live upon its surface, the air we call the heavens, as if the stars made their way through it. This too is the same, because our weakness and slowness, we are not able to make our way to the upper limit of the air. If anyone got to this upper limit, if anyone came to it or reached it on wings, and his head rose above it, then, just as the fish on rising from the sea see things in our region, we would see things there, and if his nature could endure to contemplate them, he would know that there is the true heaven, the true light, and the true earth. For the earth here, these stones, and the whole region are spoiled and eaten away, just as things from the sea are by salt water. And again, there's more on the heavens, but I don't think... Yeah, I mean, I get where they're... I get where the quote comes from. I definitely feel that they are taking some liberties with the translation, let's say. Sorry about that. Whenever I see classic stuff, I'm compelled to rush to the library. All right. So, I was thinking the... ship construction, to have some kind of an entry in the codex here would be useful. Because we've got ship design, all the covert machinations on Earth and industrialization efforts in space are the path for factions to build fleets of ships to protect and advance their interests. Once factions unlock early game orbital shipbuilding tech and the follow-on space dock project for their HABs, they can build interplanetary spacecraft. With the right modules, ships can protect and found habitats. The primary role for most ships is combat. At any time, you can design ships out of the modules you've developed. Once you have a shipyard, you can build the ships themselves out of your space resources, and if necessary, boost and money. So again, the idea here would be it would be helpful to have a better idea in terms of what resources I'm going to need, so that I could sort of guide my
offering assistance.
I could kind of guide my my improvements, like my development towards particular outcomes. And my apologies to those of you who really did not want to hear the Plato. Upon a red plain and under a hazy sky, the base commander descended from the landing craft. As we take our first steps on our new world, Armstrong and Gagarin and all the rest are walking with us. 500 science, 200 influence. Project complete, Xenoflora defoliants. We've completed the Xenoflora defoliants project. Our counselors and armies do 25% bonus damage to xenoforming. Alien attempts to plant xenoforms in our region suffer a -2 penalty. HAB module complete. We have completed the construction of the new outpost core at the Havelock base on Olympus Mons. Okay, so space dock is clearly the first thing that we want to do here. So it allows the construction of the following HAB modules. Space dock details on the modules can be unlocked by this project. basic assembly platform for interplanetary spacecraft. Also functions as a supply depot and launches probes.
Person of interest surveilled.
We've improved our knowledge about Franklin Carretro. We know the target's identity, Franklin Carretro, affiliation with Humanity First, and work as an officer. Okay. I'm just kind of taking advantage of the fact that things are quiet right now so I can continue my investigations.
Order is returning.
Okay, let's make that a permanent assignment.
We've moved the needle.
Things are cooling off.
I think we're going to be there a while. First Armored Division has arrived in Dallas. So they're going to be repairing for a while. And new army deployed. The United States of America has deployed the 101st Airborne Division in Chicago. So that actually has an effect on the overall economy. But I'm just gonna stay the course. Control point lost. We have lost the security apparatus control point in Nigeria to the academy. Many of our people are no longer responding to our communications, and we've lost a significant amount of power over events there. So I want to try and reclaim that if I can. But we also have aliens in Vancouver. 3rd Infantry Division has arrived in Atlanta. So only one of these is actually going to be repairing. 101st Airborne Division is now under control of the Resistance. Our control point in the United States of America would be better protected from enemy purges with a Defend Interests mission. I didn't appreciate that we were not locked up. Oh, right. Okay, I've got a few things I need to do then. So, number 1.
Ready.
AMV can investigate
On the way to the
alien
target
activity.
site.
Let's get Andre
Acknowledged.
to defend our interests in the States.
Making things safe for
I
our people.
Guess means we need to wait a turn before we do things to Nigeria again. Now, we are going to take a second here and look at our science. So this is February 16th. By the way, did I clear out the chat with the Play-Doh? I'll know for next time. Okay, so the servants are still abandoning industrialization of space. Somehow we're throwing a lot of weird. I feel like Arrival International Relations is measured more than it should. That can't be right. Oh, no, of course. These numbers are not going to mean anything because we got a big boost to our science. Oh, thank you, Normash. I'm never sure. Like, I do like talking about stuff like that on the stream, but obviously if you're watching a strategy game and somebody just goes running to their library to like fact check one quote, I appreciate that's a little bit of a bait and switch that most people don't care for. So I try not to get a little like. I am who I am, right? I'm obviously going to have my quirks in that regard, but where I can, I try not to be too self-indulgent on those details. I'm pretty sure that's so. There's Penguin does some so the one that I have is a collection edited by John Cooper, which seems to be a pretty good one, and I know it was one my classics prof did a Plato course. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to take that one. I only did his pre-Socratic and Hellenistic philosophy course, and I believe he teaches one on Plato, and I know his area of research is not necessarily Aristotle so much as ancient commentators on Aristotle. But I know he does. I know he does those courses. Anyways, that was the edition that he used for the Plato course, and I was too envious of everybody's big red books that I wanted a copy for myself. But there are a few good Penguin editions. Like, one of the things I love about Penguin books is that these are things where, if you're not too fussy about the translation, or they haven't updated the translation recently, you can tend to find them for a song. There's like just so many of them. And either there's, either a local used bookstore. Those are the best places to go, honestly. But even if you go on a website like biblio.com, you can tend to find them for a very small amount of money. And it's just, again, because it's what you'll learn in a basic econ course, right? Huge supply, not as much demand. Some of the contemporary stuff you may be paying a little bit more for. So, like, Penguin publishes the Robert Fagles versions of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Homer. So his copies are his versions of Iliad, the Odyssey, and I believe he's also done one of the Aeneid. So those are a little bit more recent. So those are going to be things that are probably still sitting in people's libraries, as opposed to the sorts of things where maybe there's like an estate sale or something and they wind up inside of a collection. But still, like, some of these you can still find. I'm pretty sure my copy of the Iliad is actually one that I picked up in a used bookstore. But in any case, there is a collection that Penguin puts out, and I'm pretty sure it's called The Last Days of Socrates, and it's basically Euthyphro, the Apology, I think Crito, and then Phaedo, which is the one that we just read. I'm pretty sure it's those four. And I don't know if this is the historical ordering that they give them. There's actually I think there's some indications that probably they weren't written in that order. Because Plato actually makes fun of the writing the dialogue as if it was a play, and some of his dialogue. So I think it's fair to say that that's probably going to be a style that he employs in earlier works rather than in the later ones. And the Phaedo obviously didn't have the quotations and all of that. But essentially you've got Euthyphro is one. If you've ever done like a basic philosophy course, you've probably done that one. That's one's usually used as sort of a counterexample to divine command theory. The idea that things are good because the gods say that they're good. Apology is the actual court case. Signet classes by W.H.D. Rouse. Classics. Yeah. No, I mean, so this is the thing. Like, I have started to appreciate the differences in terms of translations, and there can be a translation that really speaks to you, and it just makes a work alive. So, like, Charles Martin's translation of Metamorphoses just floored me. Like, Ovid is absolutely my favorite poet. If I'm forced to go for English poets, I'm a Milton man. I like Keats, but like John Milton is, Paradise Lost, absolutely like phenomenal. But world literature, 100% Ovid. Metamorphoses is so amazingly good. I wish everybody would have the opportunity to read and enjoy it. And the Charles Martin's the only one that I've ever read, but it's got this absolutely phenomenal introduction by Bernard Knox, which is one of the reasons, again, I really like the Fagles and the Fagles translations, because I believe he and Knox were actually quite good friends, so I tend to notice that Bernard Knox normally has introductions for Fagles' works. But like, the big thing is that it doesn't matter, like, the language matters a lot. If you really want to get into it. So like, even if like let's think of the subject of like republic, right? Justice. That whole business of defining justice If you break it down into the Greek, that is as much Plato getting rid of the modern meanings for him, the modern meanings of justice, which is something that, like, I don't know ancient Greek. I don't know modern Greek for that matter either, but ancient Greek is what matters here. Like, if you do not understand ancient Greek, that entire passage has a completely different meaning than what is likely intended, which is to kind of restore the concept of justice to this very classical, well, sorry, I probably shouldn't say, this very old-fashioned, sort of almost Homeric kind of conception of justice than what I think most people are thinking of when they're reading that. But the thing is, right, like, I kind of feel like that's something that I can get interested in because I'm now motivated enough to have a copy of, of the dialogues. And I'm reading works about them. And I think probably none of that stuff really matters if you don't have the experience of sitting down and reading a dialogue and finding it interesting. Like, obviously you want to recommend something like Symposium, or honestly, my favorite's probably the Phaedrus. That sort of stuff is really going to show people how they can like this subject. And then from there, then you start worrying about the particulars of the language and, what certain concepts mean and things like that. So I try not to be too much of an elitist, or I try not to look down my nose at certain translations. Because, in the end, it's not like I had very refined choices in terms of picking my John Cooper edited one. It just happened to be the one that I saw all the other smarter students who were in the upper level courses carrying. So I actually don't have a lot of Aristotle. My Aristotle's a modern library version, so I think probably they tend to use... I love the modern library as a series, don't get me wrong, but they do tend to go for very old-fashioned translations, which are not always the most readable. Now is time for audience participation. While I'm trying to make some progress on this, chat. What is your favorite dialogue? Platonic or otherwise. I know because we were talking about Kerbal Space Program, I have a feeling that someone's going to say, a dialogue concerning two systems from Galileo. I'm trying to figure out where I've lost
I will help them.
The points.
Protecting our interests.
Well, Eretria is the option there. No, not enough. Oh, Congo. So I could have kept Retro. My bad. You don't think you have a favorite? What's the one that you've read? Or which ones have you read? Or had read to you? This is actually, so I've been thinking about different ways that I can do. So I can't remember if I mentioned this, but there is a thing that I held off buying for a very long time. I've now bought it, and that's potentially going to be opening up a few other opportunities in terms of things for me to do for the stream. And one of those things is I have invested a little bit in some infrastructure to do audiobook readings. Now, I need to get... So, there's a few things that I need to get organized.
Violence is abating.
I need to get better at consistently reading. I don't think I'm ever going to get to a point where I can sort of read a full thing with no mistakes, but it would be good for me to get a little bit of a workflow in place to be able to say, okay, I stumbled on this word, we just back up, 10 seconds.
Violence is abating.
And, and push forward. That would be an ideal for me there. But I have been thinking a little bit in terms of the sorts of things that I would like to do, and just different ways that I can distribute it. I don't want to the truth of the matter is I do kind of need to make some kind of a financial return on the stuff that I've bought, because it is quite costly for me. But I'm not opposed to maybe putting a certain speculative amount towards it and saying, I'll figure this out over, a couple of years of usable lifespan that this thing's got. So I'm trying to think of some nice ways of making it so that people who want to do a little bit extra and sort of show some more support are able to do so. And effectively they're sort of, I guess for lack of a better term, sort of subsidizing the benefits. A little bit like Twitch, right? There's a number of people who are subscribing, and I'm obviously very grateful. Wait a minute, Olaf, I didn't say hi to you. I just saw you, just saw you in the chat. Thank you very much for stopping by. Speaking of people who subsidize for people, how many years have you been with me? 32 months. So it's over 2 years, coming on to your third. That was terrible timing, by the way, on my part, not on yours. But yeah, so the idea here is just
We found something.
to try and treat it a little bit like Twitch, to make it so that it's something that people can enjoy, but to do something as a kind of a nice little thank you to the people who kind of go above and beyond. So, if you use your Prime or something like that, maybe you get early access, or maybe you get a special video or something along those lines. And the philosophy stuff is actually something I'd be really interested in doing. Because to give you an idea, and this is not just a hooded horse thing, but I think this is definitely fair to say that because of Old World, I was thinking about this a little bit more, but because of the sacred and the profane, and specifically some of the Neoplatonist events that are built around it, it actually got me going back. So the reason why I had the Plato collection so close by was it actually got me sitting down and reading a bit more, just some of my old textbooks and things like that. I don't have the full, the Enneads, basically it's the nines. I'm trying to remember if it was collections of four. Actually, this is why God invented Wikipedia, to answer this specific. I always get the order, I believe it is collections of 9 essays. So Ennead would mean 9. So there's 54 essays in this collection. It's collected by Porphyry, but written by Plotinus. And there's a new, a big edition from University of Toronto professor named Lloyd Gerson. And the thing is that Plotinus is a very complicated thinker. So it's okay, I'll just go for the abridged version that I have as part of my part of my textbooks. And there's other things too. There's it also has Iamblichus and Proclus, and it's not just Plotinus. But what occurred to me when I was reading some of the introductory material in that, Gerson, I don't know if he's the world expert, but he's an expert. He edits the Cambridge Companion to Plotinus, and he's actually the author of the Okay, actually, sorry, one thing. For those of you who are interested in philosophy stuff, there's actually a very good free reference online called the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And what's nice about it is that compared to Wikipedia, and again, I mean no disrespect at all to Wikipedia, it is a very helpful resource, and obviously if you find a mistake in it, the hope is that you're going to correct it rather than just sit smug and say, meh, I'm smarter than Wikipedia. But particularly if you're in a university context, you do need to be conscious of the fact that Wikipedia is not necessarily a scholarly source. I personally find that Wikipedia is a really great place to start rather than finish a research project. And particularly the references, because when you go to those references, you are actually building up a very helpful tool which is the ability to see a claim, first of all, verify that that claim is correct, because there's tons of times that there's a reference in Wikipedia and the link is dead, or the author says something completely different from what is actually claimed in the article. And again, it just gets you in mind of being a critical thinker, and just trying to make sure that you are not just taking things for granted, right? That you are sort of active in your education. But if you do have to have a scholarly source, then the Stanford Encyclopedia for Philosophy is a very good one, because essentially what happens for that one, kind of these scholars are invited to write and edit the different sources. It'll actually tell you when the last time that something was edited. A few of my professors didn't have to, but contributed entries to it. And so the thing that's nice about this is that it is intended to be an encyclopedia, so it is intended to be something that you should be able to read and sort of gain a good understanding as a, let's say, non-specialist for that particular topic. So another example, I've talked on the stream before about the Journal of Economic Perspectives. If you are a labor economist, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're keeping on top of the developments in, say, international development or political economy or something like that. But if you want to kind of be on top of some subjects like that, Journal of Economic Perspectives is actually a pretty good resource, because it's written at a higher level. So, it's tougher than, say, a particularly clever op-ed in the New York Times or something like that. But it's also not econometrica, where it's half of it is Greek letters and formulas, and you just want to cry when you read something like that. So likewise with the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. You're not expected, when you read the article on Plotinus, you're not expected to know ancient Greek. But anyways, the reason why I brought it up was Gerson's introduction to the collection of Neoplatonist writings introduces Plotinus as sort of this great synthesis of everything that had come before. And I think he's referring more so to the Hellenistic philosophy, so sort of more Stoicism and skepticism. I'm pretty sure the Neoplatonists didn't care much for Epicureanism, but some of you may know my feelings on Epicureanism. It's like the secret, the secret bonus material for the stream. But it did sort of occur to me that if I really wanted to engage with this, again, this was inspired by Old World, it did occur to me that if I really wanted to engage with this, it would probably be better not for me to just start with my Neoplatonist reader, but to actually go back even further and start with the pre-Socratics and to kind of go back through some of my old material again. So all of that leads me to say I have a lot of reading ahead of me, but it's very rewarding. And this is actually one of the reasons why I really like playing games like this and Old World. So Old World obviously gets me very much focused on the past, but even something like Terra Invicta. So first of all, there's a lot of sort of near future technology. It's very clear that they've thought a lot about some potential directions things can go, a little bit like Alpha Centauri. But as we've said a few times while we played this, this is a really interesting take on the alien invasion story, right? So just like War of the Worlds is more than just some wild story about Martians invading, that you can actually pull a little bit more out of that. Likewise, in terms of Terra Invicta, there's some really interesting ideas here in terms of sort of, what does it mean to know that we're not alone in the universe? Something about the fact that humanity does not automatically unite, that there are in fact a number of just ideological differences, and you need to convince people of that. What does it take for, so if you wanted to, if you had to write a high school essay, right, what is Terra Invicta about? I would argue that at least part of this game is about how does humanity get back to doing big projects again, right? There was the Apollo program, and there's that old joke, right, that the Apollo program, the moon landing is the greatest accomplishments, or is it the greatest Soviet accomplishment or something like that? Basically the idea that the space race was the thing that motivated NASA to really be able to deliver. If there wasn't Sputnik, then we probably would have remained Earthbound. But clearly, the interest in space has only recently been reignited, and in this case, it's through a number of sort of private initiatives. Now, that may or may not be a good thing. I know a number of you probably have a few different ideas about whether or not that's a good thing. But if you take a look at all of the different ways that humanity can develop in Terra Invicta, you have this tremendous fragmentation, right? Countries that used to be sort of monoliths, they can grow. They can, you can get this unification almost. I don't think you can fully get to a one-world government in terms of Terra Invicta, but you can get a lot closer. Or you can see this complete fragmentation of humanity. You can take it down some different pathways. And then, of course, there's sort of the more macro level concerns, right? Do you follow Project Exodus, who say we're going to leave sort of our precious world and just, give it to the aliens? Or someone like Humanity First, who says, it's not just enough to get rid of we don't want to just beat back the aliens. We want to exterminate them, and we want to exterminate everybody associated with them, which is a much harder position than the Resistance. But again, a lot of this, I think, honestly, just comes back to that really basic question that Terra Invicta raises. And again, it's not the first time the alien invasion story has been told. It's not the first time that the alien invasion story is something that's a vehicle for some bigger ideas. But ultimately, in this case, I think one really big thing about this game, the one big question this game is asking as far as a story is concerned, is how do we get back to doing big, ambitious things again? Because especially if you compare, I've still been focused on my Victorians and the laying of the first transatlantic telegraph cable. You almost feel like it was an entirely different species at times. Some of the stuff that they pulled off with considerably less technology is kind of mind-boggling, which is no slight on us today, right? I would much prefer, an Ovid quote, "Let others praise ancient times. I'm glad I was born in these." But it is fair to say that actually, for those of you with the economic bent, Robert Gordon, right, his stuff on his book is actually a popular book, popular as in it's intended for a lay audience. The Rise and Fall of American Growth, I think. And this idea here that all of the really high level innovations have already occurred, and so we have increasingly diminishing returns to technological progress. That essentially, the idea of indoor plumbing has been discovered and it's in there, and so now we just do these incremental improvements as opposed to these very large-scale ones. And it's a somewhat depressing way of looking at things. It's by no means the only way of looking at it, but it's an interesting challenge. And it's one that, again, even though it's an alien invasion story, even though it's kind of a grand strategy game from the team of people who did a really great mod for XCOM 2, and XCOM 1. You can still ask big questions in the context of a strategy game like this. So there you go. We went from the ancient world to the modern world, but this is why I like these kinds of games. They are absolutely something that can give you a lot to think about, and I would actually argue it goes both ways. If you have sort of a rich and active reading life, if you have more to talk about than just video games, what you will tend to find is that the games you like also, there's a virtuous cycle where some of the things that you read will reflect back on the game, the games. Because again, the people who are making good games probably have more to say than just games too. And as a consequence, you just get to enjoy your hobbies so much more. All right, I have learned some useful information from my investigation of the alien activity in Canada. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research moving forward. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
You'd be better off surrendering. than sitting around on your backsides waiting for supplies from home. If you don't know how to use what you find in the field, you've lost before you've even begun. Colonel Hans Castillo, 5 moves ahead.
Cancelled before publication. Scientists around the world have gained full understanding of industrialization of space. The Resistance contributed the most science to the effort and will select a new direction for global research. There's almost no prospect of exploring, let alone settling, the further flung depths of our solar system until we can free ourselves from a dependence on Earth-based supply lines. We must be able to produce all that we need for ships, colonies, and mining facilities today, which is to say, in space rather than solely upon a planet's surface. There's an abundance of minerals beyond Earth's orbit, some of which we can currently mine, and some of which we cannot. We now have plans for effective micro and zero-G factories. Sub-G. What on earth is sub-G? Zero-G factories that can function with a relatively minimal human presence, able to turn the raw materials of asteroids and moons into almost anything we might create on Earth, including more such factories, often at a fraction of the cost, but at many times the scale. This is not only a matter of production, but also of trade and transport, laws and treaties that dictate what is shared with whom and for what cost, and via which approved shipping routes. Space is no longer some cosmic frontier town. It is time that it became a thriving and essential part of our economy. The following projects may unlock for us to research in the future. Our current chance to unlock a project once all the prerequisites are fulfilled is also shown. Construction module and improved maintenance procedures. So, we get to pick a new technology to research. There's a couple of things I also want to keep in mind. So I am stretched kind of thin as far as research is concerned. And there are going to be a few different paths that I want to go down. So let's take a look at the tech tree. So one of my goals has definitely been to move towards Greater North America, but that's also a very long-term goal. So essentially, Greater United North America, that's going to require United North America. United North America requires at least Great Nations. I think it requires something else as well. No, apparently just that. And then we also need unity movements, which requires arrival international relations. So we're already working on arrival international relations, so that's fine. We've got what we need there. So let's back out of the technology tree for a second. So advanced chemical rocketry, completion may unlock the following technologies: advanced missile warfare doctrine, next generation aerospace. Oh, here's a question. If I take a look at the interplanetary warships, has not been researched yet, but we can. Am I missing something here? Or do we need principles of space warfare first? Okay, that's an interesting. Oh, I get it. No, sorry. This is a like our project. Good God. When you were in college, you were directly told never to reference Wikipedia. Yeah, it's like, okay, so here's the thing. I do think it is a worthwhile resource. The problem is, and this is going to be the same problem with like this ChatGPT stuff and such, people are not just going to use it as one source among many. what they're going to do is they're going to use that as their only source. And research is more than just grabbing the first and most convenient source and parroting that back, right? Generally, what you're trying to do with research is to have like an original thought and to convey that in a convincing way. So obviously, you're not having an original thought if the limit of your understanding is a single encyclopedia entry. I suspect probably if you are just reading a Wikipedia entry and then reporting on the first thought that comes into your head, chances are you are thinking the exact same thing that everybody else is thinking when that happens. I do that, right? But this doesn't mean that Wikipedia does not have something useful to say. The problem is that once you allow Wikipedia as a source, then you kind of lose all the other sources, just given the way that people behave in school. And, I mean, again, let's be honest here. There are some difficulties as far as scholarship is concerned, right? So if you need to cite a source, what do you, like, you know, usually with Wikipedia, you'll say something like retrieved at such and such a time. But the thing is, because it's community edited, the article may not make the claim that you're using in your argument, right? You don't have that same sort of consistency as opposed to, you know, quoting the Handbook of Econometrics, you know, volume 6A. Like, even the first so the first volume of that series, I believe, is like the late 70s. And those entries still hold up. They're not state-of-the-art anymore, right? There's about 50 years of development. But it's not that the math suddenly broke. It's that people are just concerned about other things. So if you cite that, you can still do it. It just, you know, it depends on what knowledge you're employing and what you need it for. So yeah, it's, you know, you can't have that same reliability with Wikipedia, and that is actually an advantage of Wikipedia because it keeps it up to date. It allows people to change it, but it does serve a very different purpose than what I think a lot of classes are trying to do. And so I completely understand why they do it that way. It just means that there is a bit of a, you know, there's a disconnect, there's a challenge in terms of how you can get this stuff done. All right, sorry to take the time on this one. I'm really trying to figure out, like, there's a side of me that wants to do Principles of Space Warfare, but because, like, if I pick a 1000 research tech, it does make me worried that I'm going to lose the race against the other factions. So I'm actually going to read all of these. So, advanced chemical rocketry. The problem is just saying what other techs it gets me doesn't really help me that much. So scientists exceed the boundary of what is possible with our current generation of rocket engines. Scientists consider novel ways of containing and removing waste heat from our spacecraft. Now that might be useful for my combat ships later. Advanced superconductors, we can push materials known electrical resistance for the purpose of energy storage and transfer. Arrival law, legal scholars wonder at the rules of the strange new normal on Earth and in outer space. Sociology, the realization that another intelligent species has evolved will have a profound effect on how humans respond to each other. Biotech, scientists adopt evolved biological systems to serve human ends. Mass production and implementation of ultra-strong, lightweight carbon allotropes. So again, the challenge here is it doesn't really tell me anything in terms of what it gets me. Explore methods to refuel spacecraft away from Earth without requiring hefty refinery complexes. This might be interesting. Tri-hole events are less likely to occur at our mines. Lucky strike events are more likely to occur at our mines. Maybe. 5,000 is quite a high cost, though. Conventional electron-based computing with super high bandwidth photons. I'm still inclined towards Principles of Space Warfare. I'm going to begin the research, but I obviously need to adjust the ordering of things. So I'm going to just spread it out across the board right now. This may actually cost me, but actually this gives me a chance to Now, interestingly enough, it looks like the servants have given up, and it's actually the initiative that's causing us some grief. So, I'm going to take a second here to erase my records, and we're going to start again with this as period 0. Sadly, my pencil's glitching a bit, so it takes me a little while to interesting. Again, sorry about the way. So I'm using an Apple Pencil, which I'm a very big fan of, but unfortunately something's happened to it to stop the kind of the sensitive tip. Basically, it doesn't recognize when I'm holding it horizontally as opposed to vertically, so I wind up with the smallest eraser every time I use it, and it means when I have a lot of writing I need to get rid of. It takes me a little while. So, on March 1st, we've got 1542 for us, 1296 for the initiative, 1866 for us, 1302 for Exodus, and everybody's at 0. So again, the drawback here is that we don't have that much time to figure out what the right level for Principles of Space Warfare is. But this will at least give me an indicator. And then in the worst case, I pull back on the space dock and augmented combat training, but the hope is that I'm actually going to be able to put less into the global research and more into the Council engineering projects. Moving right along. Let's get Andre defending Canada next.
Securing our interests.
At your service.
Can go back to getting rid of the unrest, I think. No, hang on. Before we do that,
Targeting the opposition.
claim that back for ourselves. Okay, I spent too much time talking, so I'm just going to ignore all of these. Maybe not this one. What's going on? I sometimes pay attention to the stuff that's close to China. Detected a new alien fleet. Okay. Let's is eventually going to be a worry, because again, the aliens have got a pretty significant presence in the solar system already. And I didn't take a look at organizations, but let's do that right now. Basically all the same. Yeah, nothing too special there.
Offering counsel.
Securing our control.
New project available. We are able to undertake the Improved Maintenance Procedures project. HAB accidents are less likely to affect us, and cascading failure outcomes in events are less likely to occur. Okay, so they're actually kind of eating our lunch here, so we're going to boost this considerably. Revolution in Congo. A violent revolution has overthrown the government in Congo. Revolution in Niger. A revolution has overthrown the government.
Things are stabilizing.
Not where I'm sitting.
Our efforts didn't have any effect.
Yeah, Humanity First is really running away with it.
Our people have taken control.
The question as always remains, does it get me what I need? Not yet. Okay. I'm in a tough spot right now. So first things first, AMV can go and investigate the alien activity.
We'll see what we can find.
Reporting in.
Oh, hang on. Apparently we're still slightly over. I think I'm just going to eat that for now. Okay, let's get Andre back to... Hang on, are we defended? No, we're not. Okay, so he's going to do one last defend roll, which is
Securing our interests.
Mexico. Then we'll get him back on the charm offensive. Research-wise, so we may be able to push ahead with Principles of Space. I'm actually going to roll this back for everyone, but this is going to suck because Arrival International Relations is going to trigger in a little bit too.
Offering assistance.
Making things safe for our people.
So there's a very, very narrow difference between the two of us, but no, the Humanity First is
The
going to be
differences in our languages are irrelevant, for we all grow closer to those near us in times of distress, creating community where once there was none. Today I ask you to do just that, for humanity's future depends upon us all sharing one unifying vision. Director Khalid Al-Ashqar. Public remarks at the first Project Exodus facility.
So I blew it on the interstellar warfare. We were close, but we couldn't catch up in enough time. Scientists around the world have gained a full understanding of Arrival International Relations. The Resistance contributed the most science to the effort and will select the new direction for global research. The balance of international power has always been a delicate thing. Resource scarcity, contested territory, conflicting ideologies, ancient allegiances, naked greed. These are but a handful of the factors that have shaped the course of human history. The addition of a sentient species of uncertain intent hailing from worlds unknown only serves to complicate international relationships even further. Old alliances are tested as new players seek to capitalize on the disruption, while individual nations' self-interest reigns supreme. Looming large above it all is the variable of the aliens themselves. Will they prove to be a common threat, or will they tip the scales towards a fortunate few? If our world is to keep turning, its many nations must establish better ways of working together. After long and arduous negotiations, we now have a template for a new kind of international politics, checks and balances that will be essential to keep our planet relatively united in the face of such unprecedented change. Okay.
Diplomacy has its place, but if you don't go into every situation prepared for the absolute worst case scenario, you might as well turn up wearing nothing but a smile. Commander Fiona Ayawade, leaked training video.
The wild expanse of space invites humanity to stake its claim, but who can say what resistance we might face in the years and decades ahead, whether from threats as yet unknown or from each other? It is territory that will, at times, require defense, as will any pioneers we send forth into it. In time, we will doubtless develop new types of weapons, specifically designed for space combat and without dependence upon cumbersome, finite, and volatile ammunition stores. In the shorter term, however, the most practical approach, for which we now have detailed and proven schematics, is to modify our existing weapons for effective use in space rather than on land and sea. There is much to consider, both practically, the effects of low and microgravity on velocity and targeting, safety of usage, armoring, and bureaucratically. We must establish not only the most potent methods of space warfare, but also the rules of space warfare. The apportioning of borders, the rights surrounding unmanned objects such as satellites, the usage of non-kinetic attacks, damage to the environment of space, and that the destruction of a ship or station might cost dozens, even hundreds of human lives. And so the doctrine, now brought before us, concerns not only how to effectively fight in space, but also the complex conditions to do so. Okay. So Unity movements is where we want to go here. This is a big, expensive one, so we'll begin that research. Now, I'm not going to make the same mistake as last time, so we're going to crank all the research points into Unity movements. Now, this does mean that we're going to be giving up a little bit on orbitals, but that's fine, because... oh, actually, hang on. Alright. Let's see if we can split between Unity movements and rival law. I might wind up sabotaging both in the end. Okay, nope, we're okay.
Things are cooling off.
Order is returning.
Recon complete.
So I want to try and get out ahead of my rivals here and see if we can feed some of that science, basically roll back a little bit and feed some of this back into the other projects. What time do we have? Okay, probably got another 10 minutes. So, first things first. I don't think there's any more aliens to investigate, so we're going to get MV back on counselor investigation.
Surveilling target.
Ready for my mission.
Andre is done protecting our interests, so we're going to do public campaigns in Guatemala.
Making our case.
Guatemala is currently in civil war, so we definitely need to be reducing the unrest there. Things are starting to look a little rough in Mexico, so we may want to keep an eye on. That. Okay, Pacific states we're definitely abandoning. Let's see if we can hang on to the Caribbean. Oh, no. We pretty much have to abandon all of these. Okay, I'm going to do one more. This is going to sort of short my research in other areas, but I think this will be worth it in the long run. So I'm going to adjust my... I'm going to adjust my record by a little bit. This is going to be for April 1st, and this is just to reestablish our control of the research agenda. So we're at 188 for unity movements. Next highest would be 102 from the initiative. In position 2, we're at 2082. Now that's compared to Project Exodus's 1451. So the good news is I can afford to waste a little bit of time on orbitals. And then finally we're at 188 at arrival law compared to the 102 of the initiative again. So I'm going to expect that there's going to be a little bit of give and take in terms of the in terms of what my rivals put towards this science. What I want to do right now is establish a baseline of how much I'm actually putting in on these, how much my rivals are putting in, and then sort of rebalancing. Again, the effort here is going to be to have flows from global research to go back to council engineering projects. Although it is tempting to put a little bit more into unity movements because obviously that will enable, some aggregation of North America and otherwise improving my overall position. Once we do start uniting North America, that's when I'm going to make a move on China.
Offering support.
Alright, the space dock is complete. We've fulfilled the space dock project. It allows the construction of the following HAB modules. Space dock, we'll build that in space, although maybe we'll wait until we've got the... Yeah, actually I think the better thing to do is wait until we've got our mining operations up and running. Okay. There is a side of me that says I should wait... Well, okay. Interplanetary warships. That was easy.
I have new information.
We have improved our knowledge about SN24. We know the target's identity, SN24, affiliation with the Protectorate, and works as a judge. So, I kind of feel like I'm wasting Amvi here a little bit, but the important part, in my view at least, is I want to be able to I want to at least have the account of the foreign counselors. Like, I want to just have that on the table, and then that way I can use Amvi for other things. Clearly, there's a lot of unrest in North America that we need to get rid of. But if I can, it would be nice to just have some practicalities out of the way. For instance, we've also got sort of not exactly an alliance, but we're on better terms with. We're on better terms with Humanity First, who kind of really are our only natural ally here, I'd say.
Things are stabilizing.
Public opinion is moving in our direction.
Okay, that's a permanent assignment until we're over 50%.
Things are stabilizing.
Okay, more trouble in Nigeria, so we'll probably redeploy Amvi to sort that out. No good. Okay, we kind of were expecting that from the Protectorate, so that's a little less surprising.
Ready to go.
Okay, so, but we've got alien activity in Yemen.
We'll recon the site.
Where do you need me? Terminating the opposition.
Okay, El Salvador needs to be abandoned again. And a bunch of not the best turn for us, actually. So I'm a little curious. We're going to take a look at Mars, and then I'm also going to take a look at the research, because if I can, I'd like to redeploy my my resources a little more sensibly. Okay, we can definitely improve you. Again, the temptation for the main intelligence directorate is very high, but we do need to improve the financial situation before we consider that. Okay, science. So our closest rival is at 225. We've currently put in 424. So obviously this is a preposterous amount that we're putting in. I wonder if I'm just out of battery on this thing. Now it looks like Project Exodus has actually abandoned their efforts on orbitals, which surprises me a little bit. Sorry, just bear with me a quick second here. Yep, that's the problem. I'm gonna try and eke out a couple more seconds of life on this thing. Okay, so we are at 424. Next highest is 225. We're at 2151. They are at 1451. 424. They are at 225. Okay. Sorry for the odd noises. It's I'm tied up. Okay, so we are in practice generating 236. Compared to their, it's like 123, I think. 225 minus 102, yeah, 123. Why do I even use a calculator? Because most of the time I'm wrong. Okay, so when we basically abandon our research, we generate 69. That's our worst case scenario, because you notice at this it's 3.346, so the other ones are considerably better, but Project Exodus has basically abandoned orbitals. Okay, these other two are... So this is not too much of a mystery here. So essentially what I can do, let's just, if we take stock, if I cut the amount in half, then I'm short of what I need. So basically, they seem to be going all out, and they are able to generate 123 research. So if I divide it by 2, I get 118, which puts me just shy of where I need to be. I believe, though, if I roll this back, so if we're at 1132, so 8, 7, yeah, that's still enough. Even 6 might still be enough. So, against my better judgment, I'm actually going to just... So, this is a weird one, right? I'm just spreading this all out evenly. If I go green here, yeah, the 5 scares me. So I'm just going to spread this out evenly and see how we do on Unity movements and arrival law. And if I have to... So the priorities are going to be, I will pull back from orbitals if I have to. What I want to try and do is feed interplanetary warships and augmented council... and augmented combat training where I can. Okay, I am at the 3-hour mark, but let's do one more. Let's do one more period of this so that I can mark my science progress.
Offering counsel.
So it looks like Exodus is hardening their position in Nigeria.
Order is returning.
The situation remains chaotic.
Too many alien bases. Stop.
Here's what we found.
All right, Project Exodus took it from us.
We've removed some threats.
Well, okay. Project complete, Interplanetary Warships. We have completed the Interplanetary Warships project. Allows the construction of the following ship components: 30mm autocannon, 6-inch cannon, 10-inch cannon, Crate Missile Bay, Gunship Escort Corvette. 30mm autocannon will be deployed on Tier 1 defensive station modules. 30mm autocannon will be deployed... Okay, it'll be deployed on Tier 1 through 3 defensive station modules, as will the 6-inch cannon. The following projects may unlock for us to research in the future. Our current choice to unlock a project once all prerequisites are fulfilled is also shown. Patrol vessels, magazine, and electronic countermeasures. Details on the modules unlocked by this project, so this is going to help me out in terms of figuring out what I need. Volatiles, there's like base metals and noble metals? Yeah. So mostly base metals for 30mm autocannon. Rapid-fire autocannon that is primarily used in a defensive role but can damage unarmored targets at point-blank range. 6-inch cannon, a small short-range naval gun, turret adapted for usage on our spacecraft. 10-inch cannon, a redesigned heavy naval artillery gun suited for mounting on the nose of many of our combat craft, so pretty expensive. Crate Missile Bay, an adaptation of a naval anti-ship solid fuel cruise missile for use in space. Cool. Gunship. Okay, this is really helping us out here, so... metals, volatiles, so base metals, I'd say metals, then volatiles, with base, actually, here's the easiest thing that I can do. 24.5 plus 14, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sum up the costs in base metals for each item. Which is not quite the smartest way of doing this, but sue me. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 items. 81 does. You know what? I'm gonna calculate this late. No, I can't. Just a second. I'm gonna write this out. Okay, so Corvette needs 24.5, 7 for Noble, and 3.5 for Volatiles. Same with an Escort. 24.5, 7, 3.5. Gunship needs 14. 4, 2. I'm not going to worry about reloading. I'm just going to worry about the build cost. So for the Great Missile Bay, that only requires base metals and a lot of volatiles. As I mentioned. There is a version of this that I can do that can factor in sort of reload costs, but I don't want to get too ridiculous on this. What I'm trying to do right now is work out relative importance of different resources. This works out to be about 82 base minerals, nobles, optional. 25 plus 20.39. Finally, my volatiles 3.5, twice over, 2, 2.2, 3.3, 1.5, and 0.3. 0.3. Okay. So we're not obligated to do a certain type of research at this point. I do like the idea of augmented learning. There's a lot of goodies I can get. I think I'm gonna go for augmented learning though. Okay, so here is the way I'm gonna think about this. So there's a few different ways that I can look at how I'm currently, so there's a breakdown that I can get here, right? So I'm getting 28.9 in terms of volatiles, 20.4 in terms of nobles, and then 47.3 in terms of base minerals. So we could represent my sort of breakdown in terms of available materials by percentages. So the breakdown in terms of what I need, so 118 Sorry, I'm just doing a little math here. Now to do the really important check is to make sure that my percentages actually add up to 100. Okay, it's off by like 0.01, but I can live with that. Okay, so the way I work this out is that basically... Now, okay, just to be clear, this is not quite the right way to think about it, because obviously... if I'm going to do something that is primarily geared towards missiles, it doesn't matter that all of the other items will require more base metals. It matters that they require volatiles, and I should be prioritizing my production accordingly. The problem is that we've got a few steps through our current objective, and we don't know what parts we're going to need. We don't know what is important yet. And this is my way of... So, like, here's the thing. I kind of understand I take these really long breaks to figure some things out on paper. And this is basically the way that I try and deal with the uncertainty introduced by the fact that the game is piecing information out at a certain rate for me. So... one approach to this, and this is not necessarily the correct approach, this is just a way that I think about this particular problem, is that without any other knowledge, these various parts are equally likely for me to develop. And so, as a consequence, I'm still going to be earning some boost, I'm still going to want to be building new mines and resources and all of that. And so what I would ideally like would be the effort that I put towards building out my industry. I would like that effort to sort of reflect what I think my needs are going to be. So one thing I've learned from my current batch of production is that I do not need to worry about fissiles right now. And I need to worry about base metals a lot, and I need to worry about noble metals and volatiles about roughly the same. Again, base metals account for 69.25% of the construction costs across everything. Noble metals account for 17.22%, and volatiles account for 13.54%. Another way of expressing that is the Corvette is the largest amount as far as base metals are concerned, 24.5. Noble metals of 7, volatiles of 3.5, and it actually just so happens that that's the most expensive for everything. Actually, that might be an interesting test, because I have a feeling that probably the Corvette and the Escort are sort of dominating the rest of the measures. Yeah, so the base metals account for 70% of the Corvette's construction. There's a couple of other ways that I can sort of normalize all this stuff, but it doesn't matter. I'm happy with the way that this works. So, right now, under this construction, I'm getting 28.9 in terms of volatiles. I'm getting 47.3 in terms of base metals, and I'm getting 20.4 in terms of noble metals. Does that make sense? Knowing what my needs are going to be. It's actually probably not that far off. But let's actually work out what those percentages are. Actually works out kind of nice because it's 96.6, so these numbers are already really close to the percentages. I'll calculate them exactly because it's not exactly the hardest calculation to do in the world, but Okay, so the way that this is working here, remembering that in terms of construction needs that I have, we've got 69.25 for base metals, 17.22 for noble, and 13.54 for volatiles. The actual breakdown of my production right now is 48.96 for base, 21.11 for nobles, and 29.92 for volatiles. So obviously, under an ideal circumstance, I would want my my base metals to increase. There is another way of looking at this, which would be to say, okay, so based on nobles being the how do I work this out? Basically, I wanted to say nobles are the smallest number that I've got right now. So if nobles were to account for 17.22% of the total, how much more base metals would I need to add to the total to be able to hit the right mix? There is a way for me to calculate that, but I'm not going to do that right now just because I'm already 15 minutes over and I figure this is a really terrible way to end the stream. Now, a lot of this is academic until the end of the year, right? Because the mining complex doesn't come up until December 31st. We should have the fission pile a little bit faster. Oh, no, that's also December 1st. Oh, no, sorry. Beginning of the month for the fission pile, and then, right. But yeah, you get the deal though, right? Like, obviously I'm going to... Oh, interesting. Hang on. Okay, cool. This does support itself. I was just going to say, I actually don't have that much more power left. But yeah, so the idea is we want the outpost mining complex up so that we can continue to build our navy, but we are generating boosts. There are other things that we can do, and now that I'm getting a bit of a picture in terms of what's going to be asked of me in terms of fleet construction, what I would like to do, if I can, is basically grab as many resources as I possibly can that are built towards designing effective ships that I can use to knock back the alien threat. You know, one thing, because we know that the aliens are going to be like measuring different levels of threat, one thing that wouldn't be a bad idea is if we can fly under the radar for an extended period of time, hit them really hard in the hit them really hard with our first batch. Now there's going to be retaliation, but if we've got a navy that allows us to like really weaken the aliens out of the gate, that's obviously better than just getting these incremental wins against the aliens and then sort of finding out that they can roll over and crush us. I suspect probably the number of ships that we have will be a factor in terms of the calculating the threat level, but yes, Nexus General, although I'm going to be wrapping up, so the rest of the rescue of Terra will probably be something for another night. It's April 30th. I can't remember, did I record all this stuff? I think I said I was going to give this one more 2-week period, so let's cancel these. We've at least got the mining complex. Is this a fresh game, though? Looking forward to seeing how far we get. No, this isn't a fresh game, actually. This is the same playthrough that I was doing and kind of put on hold for Old World. I'm still doing the tutorial, so we finally got to the space dock module. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this was actually... I thought we'd have a little more time. Okay, I'm gonna propagandize...
We'll make our appeal.
Ready for orders.
Alright, what else do we have? AMV.
We'll see what they're up to.
How are we doing with... Okay, Guatemala is in civil war. Honduras is getting its act together. The rest of Central America is in flames. Mexico is still looking kind of grim. The US is actually doing a pretty good job of sorting itself out. What's going on here? Argentina and the European Union are now allies. Okay. It never hurts to see if there's anything in the org marketplace for us. Probably not, but... Okay, now, the thing we were working towards. Did my, sort of my pullback accomplish what I was looking for? Okay, so we're now at 565, next highest. It used to be the initiative, still is, 368, so that should be a worry. On orbitals, so yeah, the Project Exodus is basically given up. So that means that I can afford to sort of pull back on orbitals. And then for... Okay, so basically we're fighting with the initiative on this. What are we looking at here? So we got 368 minus 225, so for position 1 and position 3, they're generating 143 a turn. And from 565 minus 424, we are generating 141. So we're ever so close, but not quite close enough. So in this case, we're going to pull back on orbitals for a little bit. And that will hopefully... I mean, so in fairness, I could like pull back from augmented learning and augmented combat training and stuff like that, but I really do actually want to make sure that these engineering projects make some progress. So again, we came storming out the gate. Like, we have a big advantage over the initiative and the protectorate, but I want to make sure I maintain that advantage. And so basically by continuing to essentially by pulling back on orbitals and investing a bit more in arrival law and unity movements, I'm going to make sure that I'm able to sort of control the research agenda. Although, again, doing things like holding back on orbitals, it is sort of stagnating the global research agenda. But it is what it is, right? I can't do everything. So we're going to lock in those assignments, and we are going to say goodnight for tonight. So we make guilty of our disasters the sun, the moon, and stars, as if we were villains on necessity, fools by heavenly compulsion, knaves, thieves, and treachers by spherical predominance. I don't think Shakespeare wrote that. All right. It's really good to be back to Terra Invicta. Again, I need a little bit of time to reacquaint myself, but I definitely feel like on this one we made some progress, just in terms of getting some of the tutorial missions done. What my hope is that before we get clobbered, if we have to get clobbered, that at the very least I'm going to be able to get through the tutorial material and sort of feel like I have a good grip on an independent playthrough. Now, I can't make any promises that I'll go through the game any faster, but this is my plan for now, at least, to sort of be the main Monday game. There is another, not another Pavonis, but there is another Hooded Horse game that I want to be getting back to, and that is Against the Storm. And I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to alternate between Terra Invicta and Against the Storm, or if I'm going to put Against the Storm back on Fridays. I am considering more the latter, but the fact of the matter is I have been doing Cyberpunk a lot on Fridays lately. But Terra Invicta is my main plan for Mondays moving forward, with apologies to Nexus General, who I know has really been looking forward to Terra Invicta again. And I sort of let them down. But let's find somebody to host, and we will say goodnight. I've got, again, I'm looking at the end of my big long list of things that I need to do, but I do still have a lot on my plate. And thank you very much, Olaf. I am really, really happy to see you in the channel, always, but particularly when I'm playing games that I enjoy the most. Thank you very much for hanging out. I think one of the reasons I like saying that is because you're very tolerant whenever I go off on my long rants about philosophy or whatever. It's not really philosophy, classics. Anyways, but overall plans. I have 2 more YouTube videos to record for this week. I'll actually try and do that tonight. I've got some really hard deadlines for some things that I'm working on in the future, so it is going to be a bit frantic, but the plan as usual. Monday we are doing a Hooded Horse game for the sort of foreseeable future. Wednesdays are basically dedicated to Brace Yourself games, so that'll probably be the last time we do Industries of Titan for a little while, because Phantom Brigade will be releasing next week. And then Friday is ostensibly a free day, but I have been doing a lot of Cyberpunk in that slot lately. I will try to fill it with Against the Storm, because I really like Against the Storm, but again, it depends on how I'm feeling. If I need something that requires a little less concentration, Cyberpunk is very good for that. But thank you everybody for watching. I don't actually have any other Terra Invicta streamers right now, so what I am going to do is I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Drillian, who I know I have been hosting a lot lately. But they're the best available. They're actually they're a decent streamer. They're very friendly, and more importantly, they have been doing a lot of Industries of Titan lately. So I know they do Grand Theft Auto roleplay, as well as they're currently playing Axiom Verge, and I thought at the very least I could leave you in their capable hands tonight. So I'll see some of you on Wednesday. For those of you who are just here for Terra Invicta, I'll see you in a week. Take care, and say hello to Drillian for me.